Hello everyone and welcome to our first how-to video. We've not done one of these before and this isn't exactly the videos that we set out to do for our YouTube channel, but with everything that's going on in the world right now, we thought what better way to spend a little bit more of our free time that everyone may have than to use that time to help the NHS or make something that might help the NHS and our key workers. So it's just going to be a very simple tutorial on the headbands. You may have seen them. So they're a headband and they've got two buttons here and they help the mask, which is to sit around your ears, sit on the buttons instead so it doesn't hurt the ears. A lot of the key workers have been wearing masks every day and having to change them regularly and wearing them for like 12 hours a day, so they're putting a lot of pressure on the tops of their ears here. So if we can make these headbands, then they can sit on the buttons here instead of sitting on their ears, and that can just relieve some of that pressure. It's just a small change that we can make to their daily routine, and we can add that into their uniform with very little material and time. So we're going to show you how to do it. Not kind of done this tutorial kind of setup before, so bear with us and we'll show you along. So let's get started. Okay, so I've already made some markings on this, but that's just for ease a little bit later on. The first thing you're going to need is some paper. Obviously you can tell I'm using pattern paper here, and this is quite long. The alternatives, if you don't have any access to pattern paper, would be some baking paper or something that comes on a roll, because it's not necessarily too wide, so that would work well. You could maybe piece some A4 sheets of paper together using masking tape, because masking tape is still really good to draw over when you're creating your pattern piece, or the back of some wallpaper if you've got any spare wallpaper rolls. So just make use of whatever it is that you've got around you. So you're going to first take that piece of paper and you're going to fold it in half, and that's going to create your straight line. So you've created a straight line, and this is basically going to be the edge of your headband, and then the seam that you've sewed together is going to be the other side of your headband, the length. So the length of the headband I've worked out for the one that I think would be suitable is 33 inches, so that leaves you enough to tie around the back of your head. I've started with the start of my tape measure, obviously starting with 1, and I've brought it down to 33 inches. So I've marked out here 1 and here at 33 inches. So I've just used my pencil to make a mark in there. Half of 33 inches was 16.5. So I took 16.5 here, and that makes the center of my headband. So that's where that would sit, in like the center of my forehead. And then I've also decided that the width of the headband is going to be 3.5 inches. So I've marked on from the center of my 16, so going from 1, which is the start of my headband, to 16.5, and from the middle 16.5, I've taken my tape measure again, and I've marked on that I want it to be 3.5. So I'm going to do this as if you don't have a set square, because this is a really useful tool that we use to create straight lines when we're creating patterns. But just in case no one has that, then I'm going to show you with the tape measure how you can do it. So we want it to be 3.5, and we know that this is the end of the tape measure and this is the end of the tape measure, but we don't, this is the end of the headband and this is the end of the headband, but we don't want it to be 3.5 the whole way around. We want it to narrow off where the ties go, so it's not too chunky at the back when we're tying the back of the headband. So I've marked on here that we want the end of the headband to finish at 1 inch. So marking on with using your tape measure 1 inch, and doing the same at the other end. So here and here are finishing off at 1 inches. We know that we want the center of the headband to finish at 3.5, but we also know that we want the main section of the headband sitting over our forehead to be also 3.5, and we want it to narrow off to the ends of our headband, which are finishing off at 1 inch. So what I'm going to do is I've figured out that we want the buttons to be 10.5. So sitting on, there's the centre of our forehead, and either side we want them to be finishing across at 10.5 inches. So that's 5.25 from our centre point. So we're going to take our tape measure again, and where we've drawn along at 3.5, we're going to measure 5.25. So again, make a marking at 5.25 and do the same on the other side from the centre point. So just to go over that quickly again, this is our centre point, and this is measuring from the bottom of the straight folded line 3.25. These are our button points, and these are measuring from the centre point outwards 5.25 and 5.25. These are our end points. The full length of the headband is finishing 33 inches, and the width of each of these are 1 inch. So from your button points, which are here, either side of the central point, they should still be finishing from the folded point 3.5. So just take your tape measure and draw 3.5 up over. So then we can see that we're creating quite a thick band here, but it's narrowing off here. So what I tend to do when I do this is, I know that I want my straight point here, and I'll just work on one side now of the pattern. If this is where I'm wanting the headband to finish, but this is kind of the grade that I'm going to need to create, then I'll just start off with at the button point, and I'll just sketch in the sort of shape that I want it to finish. So all I've done there, and if you feel like you've gone wrong at all, that's absolutely fine. Just keep narrowing it off so it creates a nice smooth line. So I'm going to show you that a little bit closer up. See, so this is my centre point of my headband, and this is measuring 3.25. This is my button point, and that is measuring 5.25 from my centre of my headband. Along here, to create this line, if you don't have a set square and you're using just a tape measure, then you need to measure 3.25, the same as this central line, up, along, right up until your button point. And then this is your end point, which this full length along here is 33 inches. This end point here is 1 inch. So we've finished up at 1 inch here, and then here is our button point. All I've done is I've just graded in with my eye and dashed a line in until the end of the headband. What I've done is I haven't done the same on the other side. Now what I'm going to do, because this just makes it easier for you again, that's my folded line, because this is symmetrical, so it mirrors itself. This and that side, the left and the right side of the headband of the central point, also is a mirror image, so you can fold it in half again, because that just makes it easier for you. Once you've got this nice graded line here from the top of the headband, the central part of the headband till the tying point, you can just mirror this image on the same on this side. So if we fold it in half again at the central point of the headband, this is really important that you get it nice and symmetrical, so make sure that your lines that you're folding in half is nice and straight. So I'm making sure this line is matching up nice and straight before securing this straight across. So there we go. So that's nice and straight, because that's my straight central part of my headband, and this is my folded line. So I've sandwiched this together, and now I know that when I cut round this, that I'm gonna have a full piece that is symmetrical on both sides, but also symmetrical on either side, which is gonna be sandwiched together. So, you just take your scissors, but just make sure that you're just, when you're cutting this, that everything stays in place, because it's very easy for one of the underneath patterns to slip. I did say this was very simple, and it's very basic pattern cutting. I've just never explained how to do it before to somebody else. So, if you've cut away your points, the ones where it's your markings for your button points, then you can just go back and pop that in. What I'm gonna do is, I've folded it all back in half, and I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm gonna create a notch. So with the notches, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna snip in a V, like that. So just snip in a little V, and I'm gonna do the same at the central point. So all you need to do, if you can see this, so this is the headband, that's the folded point. If you just put a little snip here on the corner, then you're gonna create a notch right in the center. You've got a notch here and a notch here. So that'll help you in the sewing process, but I'll talk to you about why that is a little bit later on. Okay, I hope everyone's managing, and you can pause this at any point with it being on YouTube. If your notches have came out a little bit small on the other side like mine have, then just go back in and make them a little bit bigger, because you want them you want them nice and clear. So here's your headband. So we've got our notches for our central part of the headband, where our buttons are gonna go. And then we've got our tip and the tip again. Okay, so there's a reason why these will help you with the buttons, but there's parts of it that they won't help you with. Once it's sewn together, you won't see the notches anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our set square. Again, if you've got a ruler, then I'll show you with this one. My ruler's just really big. You're going to match up from this notch to this notch. So this is the notch where your ear, where your button's going to go to kind of replicate the ear, so the mask can sit on that. What I want you to do is place a little dot on the line, on the folded line. So you just put a little marking on there and do the same on the other side. So make sure that the ruler hits the notch at the top and the notch at the bottom, then we know that that's a straight line. It's all about straight lines in pattern cutting. So I've got one of these, which is a drill hole. If you don't sew, then you might not have one of these if you don't do any pattern cutting. So the other alternative I've thought is you can literally, I'm trying to think of anything else that may create a drill hole that's not a drill hole. But what you can do is you would take your pencil or something sharp and you would put that through the little marking that you've done, but just make sure that you're making it, you just want to make a little hole. It doesn't need to be a big hole. I'll show you what this is going to do. So I'm just going to take out where my markings were, which is the central, on the central fold of the headband, in parallel, if that's the right word, from the notches. So you can see here that I've created a hole in this. This is because when this is all sewn together, we still want to know where the buttons are going to need to go, and you're just going to basically chalk on or mark on your material so that when it's all folded together, it just saves you remeasuring it. If you don't want to put the drill holes in using a pencil, because you would literally, I'm going to show you on this, you would need to make the marking and then you would press through, which would create like a little hole like that, but it's just not quite as neat as, so if you kind of screw through there, then it's not quite as neat as obviously using one of these. So that's your pattern piece. It's very, very basic and simple. This here, this straight line, is your grain line. So that's important when we come to the cutting process. So now, that's the pattern part of everything, and I'll put in the description box down below the length by the width, and then it's up to you to make this sort of grading shape yourself. It's very simple. You're literally just marking it from 3.5 here to 1, so you're just shaving off, what's that, 2.5? 2.5 inches and grading it down, so it's nothing too drastic, so it is very simple to grade that down. So now we're ready to take it to the cutting part. So I'm hoping that I made that easy enough to follow. I'm not the best at explaining. Yes, so the reason why we've made it this length is we're using a non-stretch fabric. We're using what we've got available to us, and that's what I feel like everyone who wants to join in on this is going to be doing. There is a way that you can make these either in stretch fabric or you can make them with elastic in the back. We don't use elastic for any of our garments, so we just wanted to use what we had available to us, and we thought if we make it as simple as possible, then you guys at home can join in as well, so you don't need a lot to join in. So if you don't have any fabric, as in a roll of fabric, then you could use bedding, you could use curtains, anything like that. I mean, if it was wide, enough, like old clothing, it basically just needs to be a length of this. But just bear in mind, if you are going to use old clothing, then to get a grain line, which I'm going to explain to you what that is in a minute, then that's going to be a little bit difficult. So, but these don't need to be, you know, unbelievably perfect. It's whatever we can do to help. So yeah, this pattern is built for a non-stretch fabric, so I'm trying to think of anything else you can use. Just any kind of, yeah, any sort of like bedding or blankets or any sort of like home textiles that you're not using, sheets and things. Just stick them in. The majority of them will be cotton, so stick them in a wash, a 60-degree wash, and get them dried, and then they'll be ready to work with. But we're using this today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this out, and I'm matching this salve edge, which is our straight edge of our fabric, up against our pattern cutting table. So if you're going to cut this at home, then just be mindful of using it on maybe like your dining room table or something, rather than if you're using it on the floor, you haven't really got that kind of edge that you can straighten it up with. So if you're using like a sheet, an old sheet or curtains, the edge of them will likely be straight. So use that straight edge to line up against the edge of the table, so the edge of your fabric to the edge of your table. I will bring you in a little bit closer to show you this too. So this is our pattern piece. I'm going to pop that down, and we're going to leave it wide open, so we're not using it in half anymore. Depending on obviously the fabric again that you're using, if you're going to use it this way, if you're going to cut it across your fabric, that's fine, you can do that too. Or you can cut it down your fabric, it depends. A lot of the time it's whatever you can get the most out of. If I was cutting this, if I'm cutting this on this material, it's worth me cutting, there's no stretch either way in this material that I'm using. But often you'll find with fabrics that there's a stretch kind of down the fabric or across the fabric. It's often across the fabric, but if it's a non-stretch like this, the only stretch there'll be is across the grain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut mine down the fabric instead of across, because I know that I will get more out of my material that way, and the more that we can get made for the NHS, the better really. So this I'm going to lay down and I'm going to weight it down. Our weights, please don't laugh, but this is our weight. We have 2 others, but I really don't know where they are right now. And then you're going to take your tape measure. So you've laid it down, and that straight line that we created with a fold has now become our salve edge. So, sorry, not our salve edge, it's become our grain line. So we need our grain line to make sure that the pattern piece that we've just created is straight, so it's not twisted and it doesn't distort when we make the garment, or in this case the headband. So you're going to take your tape measure, put it on your folded straight line at the top end and measure what it's measuring. Well, I always put my nail on. I don't tend to take note of the measurement. I tend to just hold where it is, but here it is 4 inches. So when I measure at this end, I want this end to also be 4 inches, because then that means that this is straight. So if it's measuring, it's ever so slightly twisted to this way, so I'm gonna twist it in slightly and re-measure, use my nail and check again. So now I've twisted it so that this is now straight. If for whatever reason, say this is 5 inches at this end, it's measuring 5 inches from your grain line to your salve edge, then measure down here, and that's measuring 4. You don't need to move it an inch, you need to move it half an inch, because it'll counteract either side. I hope that makes sense. So when you're chalking on, just make sure that you're not going to move your pattern piece. Hold your fabric when you're chalking, because the fabric tends to slip or move depending on what you're using. But I always weight my finger down and then press on with my chalk. I'm going to take my chalk and these notches that we put in, so buttonhole, centre and buttonhole, and the same on the other side. I'm chalking these in because I know I said that you won't necessarily see these when the headband is made, but they're going to help you in the sewing process, so they're going to make sure that you're matching up either side. Now we've chalked it all on, it's ready to cut out, but the last thing we're going to chalk on, which I'm just going to mention this one, so if you're not using chalk, don't mark this section on. If you are, then mark it on. But if you're using pen or pencil to mark this part on, then I would suggest that don't ignore these holes, don't put anything in them, and what we'll have to do is we'll have to re-measure using the tape measure once the headband is made. So that's all ready to be taken off, so pop your pattern aside. If you were going to be making a few at once, then I would suggest cut a load and then make a load, because you're getting the rhythm of making your, of cutting, and then you're getting the rhythm of making, and it's just nice to get the right amount of your fabric. So if I was going to cut some more now, I'd do exactly the same again. I would set that as close as I can to my piece that I've just drawn out here, and I would re-measure again. So I would measure out from my grain line to my salve edge, and my grain line to my salve edge, and I would do that 2 or 3 times along, normally at the very top end, so here, and at the very bottom end, so here, and just make sure that they're matching up. If that's right, weight it down, chalk it out again, and repeat the process. So I've got some pattern cutting scissors here. You can use obviously normal scissors, but if just you want them nice and sharp, it might be a little bit more difficult if you're just using like your everyday scissors, but obviously it might be a mix of people here. You need a sewing machine to obviously join in on this, so it's likely that you are already going to have some pattern cutting scissors. So I'm just going to, sorry this is a little bit out of camera, so I'm cutting round my headband and I'm just going round on my dashes. This is our headband. If you've chalked on, then your inside, if you've chalked on your little drill holes, then this is going to be outside of your fabric, so you're going to turn it together so that then your inside, your right side of the fabric that you want your 2 chalking marks is on the inside, and this is going to be sewn together. So you can see that's your piece, and that's going to be your headband when it's finished off. So now we're ready to go to the sewing machine. So please ignore the state of me. I wasn't exactly planning on being at the full force of a YouTube video this morning. This is the closest thread that I have to my material. It's a pretty good match, and I've filled up a spool, so just one of these. And the only other things you're going to need here is some scissors, obviously a sewing machine. You may need something to turn it through with. We just use a screwdriver, and it always works really well for us, but you may not need this, so just keep that there just in case. So I'm going to change my sewing machine over to the correct colour. I was going to sew it in white, but just so that when you were seeing it, that it was a little bit clearer for you to follow. But actually, I think it's best that I just sew it in the correct colour, so then I'm one step further to having the order finished and fulfilled for the NHS nurses on James Cook, in James Cook on Ward 3. So I want to get that finished really, then just making another kind of sample run. So I'm just threading my machine up. I haven't shown you how to thread your machine up because everybody is going to be using different machines, and if you've got a machine, an industrial machine like me, then you are already going to know how to thread one up. Oh, I haven't got greys and I'm sat here. So you're already going to know how to thread it up, and if you've got domestic, then every domestic will be different. One thing I will say is hats off to any domestic sewing machiners, because I've just had a little go on one that someone has gave me at home, and it's nowhere near as easy as working on this machine, definitely not. You're going to stitch here 1 centimetre, so I'm going to pop that underneath, and you're going to leave, you're going to stitch, it's going to be in 1 centimetre, and I'm stitching down 1 centimetre. So start off here and you need to back tack, so back tack and then stitch out for 1 centimetre. So I've done it as 1 centimetre, and now I'm going to lift up my foot and I'm going to pivot. The Friends episode, if anyone's seen it. And now I'm going to stitch down here a straight line. Just going to lift that up so you can see I've done 1 centimetre in, and then when I've reached so far, I've pivoted, and then now I'm doing another straight line. If you've got a non-stretch fabric like me, then what you want to do is you want to just keep working with your fabric so that one will likely pull under the other. And then I'm going to carry on stitching down because I want my centre point to meet, which it has. And then I want to carry on going so that my next buttonhole notch meets. So I said that you want to leave like a little gap, and you do, and I would suggest that you leave that at the back, so at some point at the end or the start where the ties are. So what I'm doing is I'm going to do that there, and if it's ever so slightly twisted you can sometimes feel like that. And then I'm going to back tack, come off, because this is where I want my gap to be. So you can see I've stitched so far along, stopped, and I'm going to leave a gap here. So I'm going to leave a gap here, and then I'm going to stitch together and do the same on there as I am on this end. So that's all finished apart from your tiny little gap, and then just cut away any little excess threads. So you can see that. So now what we're going to do is we are going to, see if I'm still in line here, we are going to turn this inside out. So I shine my light up there. So this is going to want to come inside out. So turn it inside out like that. Hope you're all still following along and managing it. It's very, very simple, but an easy one to start with if you have had a sewing machine sat there and you've not actually had a little go on it. It's a perfect time to get it out and learn something new, learn some new skills. And this is just something very simple that we can do to help the NHS. It wasn't planned that it was like a blue teal colour, but it is the colour of our NHS, so that's nice. So now what you'll end up with is something similar to this, and here, and this is the end where you've got your opening as well. So when I said earlier that you might want a screwdriver or something that you can use, what you need to do with this is you're going to pop it inside the opening that you've left, and if you just push out to the end, then just don't do this, depending on your material, don't do this too hard, because there's a chance that you can come through the other end. So you're just making it nice and neat like that. And again, I'm going to go in the other end. This is only short because this is the end where we've left our opening, and then again, there you go. So now we're going to take it to the heat press. Obviously if you don't have a heat press, then you'll just have like your normal iron. So what you're going to do is you're going to start from the end, and then this folded line where you've stitched together, it'll just be bubbling out a little bit. So we're just going to flatten that off so everything's nice and neat. And what you're going to do is you're just going to do that all along and make it nice and straight. Okay, so there we go. That is literally it. It's very, very simple. You can still see our tiny, tiny little marks there, if you can see them, of where our chalkings are for where our buttons are going to go. Now it's all pressed out, we're going to go back and we're just going to close up our little opening. My pressed headband back to the machine, popped it under, and I'm just putting a tiny little tack in the length of where I've left the little opening to push everything through. I've back tacked at the start and back tacked at the end. You don't need to do this, but I'd kind of put a tuck in at the end whereabouts the buttons will go, and I've just secured that in place with like a steam. You don't need to put that in, but it's just as an, if you wanted to add that in so it can sit wide or it can sit thin. Okay, so once you've picked some buttons that you think are suitable, these are what I'm going to use, just some little navy ones. You've got a hand sewing needle and some cotton that matches what you've just made. And some scissors. It is crazy to know how many people don't know how to sew a button on, but I am one of those people who sews every single day but actually doesn't fix any of my own garments that need new buttons on. I've got pyjamas with them missing, I've got all sorts. So what I do when I sew a button on, I thread the needle through and then I make it double the width, double the strength. So And then I'm going to knot round and make this into a nice strong knot like that. And if you've got any loose ends, just snip them away. So make sure that's nice and strong. You see? So I know these are a little bit different to some you may have seen on like Facebook and things, but these are what we are doing with the fabrics that we've got readily available to us. We don't work with like elastics or stretch, so we just thought this would be the most useful. So if this is what you've made yours with, and you haven't, just if you've decided to put the pleat in, if you haven't, obviously it'll be sitting like this. If you have and you've pressed that in, then there's no right or wrong way. It just means that that can open out around someone's head and this can go nice and thin. It just depends on the person who's going to be wearing it. So if you can go back and find your chalked in marks, I can still see both of mine. If you can't, let me show you how you can find them again. So you need your tape measure again, and you're going to fold this in half. This is if you don't have dots still in place. And then what you're going to do is, so after trying the headband on after and seeing where the buttonhole position's finished, I think it'd be best to increase that by an inch. So that would now finish on 6.25 on the half from the centre point of the headband instead of the original 5.25. A tiny little mark, and then that's exactly where your button's going to go. And do the same on the other side. So the button is then going to cover up your mark. If you haven't put the pleat in, then here's where I'm going to be putting my button. I'm going to stitch, and this is just one side of the fabric, and then that's going to be where the end of my stitch is going to go, the end of my thread. And I want to use the button to hide that. So I'm now going to take the button and I'm going to sit that over the end of my thread, because I don't want to see that on the other side. And then now you can go ahead and stitch through and all the way through again and pull it nice and tight. So you've got one secured stitch, and then I'm going to go across. So this is a button where it's got 4, so I'm going to go in and over and then swap sides and then go in and over. So this is how you are going to finish off your button. So go on the back end and go under the stitching that you've already done and pull through, and then maybe just do it one more time and then go under the loop that you've created and then pull that tight, and then that should keep it quite in place. And then if you want to just go through the other side just to come through, and then go out this side. So you've created a gap underneath. Oops. So you're not going right through to the other side, and then I just go around a couple of times like that, pull it nice and tight, and then just cut it underneath. So your secured section is underneath, but I'm just wrapping that round so it's nice and neat there, and then that's your button. And then just repeat the same thing on the other side. Okay, so there we have it. A finished headband. Very, very basic, as I said. It is a very basic idea. It's using kind of 2 household items, some spare fabric, which you don't need very much, as you can tell, and 2 buttons. So if you don't have any of this spare fabric or buttons, I'm sure with somebody around you that you could maybe do a non-contact collection, or they could do a non-contact drop-off. We're not encouraging people to be going and visiting people to collect these items, but you will be able to, it's likely that you maybe already have these in your household. It's a very basic thing you can do to help the NHS and to just create a little sewing project for yourself. But we thought if you guys could all join on, anyone who's willing to, and you've got these sorts of fabrics readily available to you. If you've got elastics or stretch, then you can make them with them, and I'm sure there might be some videos out there that are suitable for that. Any sort of headbands videos that you can look at with, and then just attach 2 buttons on the side, then that would work really well. But this is what we've got available to us. We don't use elastic, we don't use stretch fabrics, so this is the sort of material, making it tieable at the back, that was more suitable to the items that we had available to us. So we hope you enjoyed it. I hope that this was easy to follow along. Never filmed like a focused down video before, so that's quite hard to see if you're kind of showing everything. But if you've got any questions, please just DM us or pop them in the comments box below. I will leave the descriptions about the pattern, kind of all the dimensions and everything below, just in case you need to recap on them. But that again is very simple, basic pattern cutting, and it just makes something very simple but will hopefully be much appreciated by the key workers and the NHS. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a thumbs up. I don't know whether we'll do any more kind of how-to tutorials maybe in the future, depends how long this goes on for, and we'll pop them on here if we do. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. See you later. Bye.